Welcome to the Aspire Europe Governance and Controls Principles course. This is the introduction video where we're going to give you a quick rumble through most of the topics. Prior to watching this video, hopefully you'll have done the fundamentals course so that you've got a decent grounding in the concepts before we start. So let's move forward. First of all, governance is around layers of control because we need to be able to have clear and precise decision making. One of the problems organisations come across is that they end up with highly complex layers of bodies that need to be consulted to give opinions or give approval. And it's really important to try and design around that kind of situation. So there's three layers that we need to think about. There's the directing, which is the top of the organisation. And the word we normally associate with that is accountability. Yeah, this is where the authority to spend lots of money and make big decisions is probably sitting. Within a project, that's normally represented by the sponsor or the SRO, or whichever body of knowledge you're using. Then we've got the management layer. That's where our projects and our program managers are working. And it's there where we are making decisions day to day around the actual project delivery. So directing is about setting the direction, managing is about keeping the whole thing coherent and under control. And then we've actually got the delivering, which is the team, the people doing the work. And for those of you that are familiar with Agile, quite a lot of those really good techniques in Agile are around how the team itself should operate, which is really down in the delivering layer. And it's quite a unique view, because if you look at MSP and PRINCE2 and APM, they really talk about the managing layer, but awareness of the directing layer and the role of the sponsor is increasing everywhere at the moment. So let's have a little think about the organisational levels that affect programme and projects. So at the top, we've got portfolio management. So that's the totality of an organisation's investment in change and improvement. So that's where that term comes from. And it comes from the historically from the concept of the financial portfolio, where you're balancing risk within finance. And in effect, that's what an organisation is doing when they're sorting out their governance and their project delivery. So the directing things at the portfolio level. We've then got the program layer, which is really about delivering some big stuff and substantial change. And normally with a program layer, we're starting to talk about changing business processes quite significantly, or if you're looking at the transport sector, for example, looking at the way modes of transport are working, there's normally a much bigger change going on rather than just building the projects, although that's where the money tends to be spent. And then we've got project layer, which sits below it and is about building stuff. So we've got those three tiers. So when we're thinking about governance, when you're putting your governance structure together, you need to think about where the levels of authority are and how decisions are going to move up and down between those layers, just like we mentioned with the directing, managing and delivering. Okay, if we look at those layers against a pretty kind of standard kind of governance model, at the portfolio level, we'd have our program sponsor or our SRO or whatever the words, exec director, whatever it happens to be, sits at the portfolio level, accountable for the direction of a program. We then cascade down into the program, and remember that at the program layer, it's in two halves. So the sponsor comes down representing the strategic direction. We've got the program delivery, which is the program manager looking after all the projects. It could be using the term program director, there's lots of different words, but it's about directing what's going on in the projects. The other half of the program is the change delivery, which in MSP calls it the BCM. Other people call it other things, but it's really making sure that change gets delivered. Then we drop down into the project layer, where we've got our project sponsor, who's at a lower level to the program and portfolio sponsors. It's about delivering the business requirements from that specific project, but staying tuned to what's needed at the program level. And then we've got the project manager who's running the team. Then we've also got the senior user or the client user or the person that's actually representing operations and what they need. And then we've got the suppliers, whatever they may be doing. Each one of those may produce a change team in their own right. Okay, so there's a complex world. Now, if you're in a program world, quite often you see the program delivery side of it in place, but then we have problems with the change delivery. So please kind of recognize that issue that we have. Now, we've briefly covered some ideas about the hierarchy, and when you get into the course, we'll cover all this in more detail. And let's think about authority, because effective decision making is all about having clear authority. So we've got this acronym that we all use a lot, which is called RACI, which is responsibility, accountability, consulted, and informed. All right, so let's just think about what each one of those means. At the top tier, the exec is accountable. And that basically means the buck stops with them. But it also means they cannot delegate accountability. So it sticks with them. And if anything really goes wrong with this program or project, that's the pinnacle of decision making. We then have responsibility. Now, that's quite often associated with project managers or program managers for getting the job done. But it's more complicated than that, because what does responsibility mean? It means you're responsible for the task, but you don't have to do the task. So responsibility can be cascaded down. And then we've got this concept of consulted. Now, what does that actually mean? Consulted means the project's, you're important, so the project needs to speak to you. What's not really very clear when we look at assurance in this area is whether consulted means we have to listen to people. So if I were to consult you on something and you gave me your views and then I ignored them, that would be perfectly okay, but actually it probably wouldn't make you very happy. So we need to always be very careful about consulted. It's the sort of thing that gets associated with stakeholders, but it's also a really major bear trap that you can fall into, because you end up consulting everybody. And so people without authority start chipping in, and then what do you do with their views? The other one is informed, which basically means you're going to tell them what's going on. So it's questionable whether that's actually part of governance, really, because you just tell it. It's more of a communications thing, isn't it? So that's what RACI stands for. We actually use a slightly more refined one, which is called the 5 A's, which is approver, authority, actions, advise, and assurance. And we find that's much tighter when we're allocating them to roles. But best practice uses RACI, so let's go with it at this level. As you build your governance model, you need to think about the structure of the information that you're gathering. So what you're really looking to get is a governance strategy that sets out how your project and program fits with the rest of the world. If you're part of a portfolio, then you'll be inheriting a number of standards and processes and working practices. If you're in a standalone mode, then you might have to create these, and these will have to cover a whole range of areas around control and benefits and risk, about how you're actually going to manage yourself, how you're going to align to your organizational policies, for example, standard systems, like maybe you have to use for HR. So you need to recognize them, else you'll catch a cold at a later date. Then you've got to think about the organizational structures and reporting lines. We talked about the kind of program hierarchy. PRINCE2 has one, APM has one. You need to actually put your organizational breakdown structure together to show how all the various committees and roles and working groups fit together and how information flows through them. And then looking at the individuals on those committees or in key posts within the program or project, they need to have their own job descriptions. Who they are, what's expected of them, and when they're expected. There's a little bit about that later under controls, but just having good job descriptions so everybody knows where they stand will make the delivery of the project and program a whole lot easier, even if it's hard work at the start. So some things to think about in good governance, right? What does good governance look like? It looks like fast decision making, yeah? Because if you've got clear authority, you can make your decisions. But of course, it also means effective decision making, because it's quite easy to make fast and wrong decisions. But we have to just kind of take that on the chin sometimes. I mean, we're recording this at the end of the COVID era, or certainly the first phase of the end of the COVID era, and clearly lots of fast decisions were made quite badly, but on the basis that decisions had to be made. And actually, it's better than procrastination, because if you make a bad decision, you can probably correct it. If you procrastinate, you just go around in circles and lose the faith of the people around you. To achieve those things, authority has to be clear, so you can go to the right people, and they need to be available to actually give you the answer. And then we get into behaviours, because are they willing to give you the answer? Are they willing to take the authority that's embedded in them? And people understand their roles. So if they're an SRO, they understand the authority sits with them. Yeah, the program manager should know their limit. The project manager should know their limit. Change teams should know their limits. Okay, so everybody needs to know their roles. And just going back to the previous slide, the difference between consulted and responsible, we should be very clear the difference between a stakeholder who is interested in what's going on and decision makers who are influencing what is going on. Now, one of the first things we check on an assurance review is what is the level of authority of all the people on the program board. Because if it's not clear and we've got lots of stakeholders on there, that's probably why they're not making decisions very quickly. So let's have a little look at managing controls. Now, having controls without governance is a bit like having a driver without a car. So what happens when a car hasn't got a driver? It has accidents, whether it's a Tesla or whatever it happens to be. So controls are the way you drive the car. The governance is the decisions that are being made around that car, which sit clearly with the sponsor and the various teams at the various levels. So let's start with project controls. I'm sure you're all familiar with the time, cost, quality iron triangle as it's known. When you think about it, it's actually the business case, because time, cost, quality affects the business case, because the business case is based on spending money at a certain rate to achieve certain returns on investment. So if you run late, you may not get your benefits, you may not deliver on time. If the cost goes up, it may outweigh the benefits. And if quality degenerates, you may not be able to deliver the business benefits defined in the business case. With the two other dynamics in there of stakeholder, because there's research by the National Audit Office that says ultimately stakeholder satisfaction is the most important thing, because especially in public projects, if the end game can sometimes justify the means. Some of the best public project or best projects in the public domain now ran very late and over budget, like Wembley Stadium, the O2 Arena, when it was originally put together for year 2000, were pretty dismal projects. But now we look at them in a much fonder way. So stakeholder perception is important, and of course risk are all the things that can go wrong. So that's the project level controls. Then we move up to the program level, and the dynamic change, and everything gets a lot bigger. So we've got projects are now basically our cost. We've still got a business case in the middle. We've got much more stakeholders, much bigger risk. We have benefits, which are much more detailed definition of the good stuff that's going to happen. And then we have the idea of the blueprint or the target operating model. That's the basis of quality in effect. That replaces quality at this level. So if the blueprint changes, as in what does the future operating system look like, that'll affect the benefits, and it'll affect what the projects need to deliver. So we've still got an iron triangle, even at the program level. It's just bigger and probably a bit more difficult to see. But if you're at a program level, that's where you should be looking. So these are the full range, because time, cost, quality can be a little bit limiting in its view. So we can see these 6 pointers on the star. So time's in there. Risk, we've already mentioned in a previous slide. Scope affects quality, all right, but it also affects what you deliver. Now it also affects benefits, and it also affects cost. So these 6 dynamics together. So these are the 6 areas you need to look at to manage control in effect. You need to be able to report on these on a regular basis. You need to investigate, check the projects are doing what they've said, but there's the basis of your control. Here's the key information that you need to think about. First of all, you need to have your control strategy. We just looked at the 6 areas that you need to manage in terms of cost, scope, benefits, etc. You may have other areas you need to manage, so you need to pick that together and put it into a strategy. It may be that you're part of a portfolio or you're a project in a program. You need to set out how you're going to interface all that sort of stuff so that we understand reporting lines and everybody who wants to deal with you understands what's necessary. If you're using particular standards or industry techniques as part of your critical path or EVM or something or other, you need to set out in your strategy that's what you're going to do, not just assume everybody knows you're going to do it. Then we need to have our control plan, and that's about how you're going to implement it, how you're going to roll it out, and how you're going to make sure it's working. You're going to be using highlight reporting and all that kind of stuff. So you need to write that down as part of your plan. How will you maintain control? And if you're actually using the 5 case business model, for example, then you would probably be setting this out in the management case. And then there's the quality reviews. Who's going to check that everything's working and when? Are those control plans working? Are we going to use assurance? We could have an integrated assurance strategy, all sorts of things you could use, but you need to actually document it. Lots more about that when you actually get into the course. The one key technique we need to consider under change control is how to manage a change, because whichever of those 6 areas that it's affecting, we need to do this in a systematic way. Now, the seeds of failure, particularly in big programs and projects, are set by weak change control. And actually, that's not to say people are not doing the change control in a robust way, but it's the failure to see the implications. So here's a standard 5-step approach. You identify and assess the change, why it's needed, where it's come from, what's the impact. Then we analyze the options. We prioritize it and decide whether we're going to do it or not. We then stand back, plan, schedule it, implement, control the consequences, review and close. So pretty straightforward. Now, where does the problem start? Let's just look at something like Crossrail. All right, Crossrail was looking great while it was digging a huge tunnel under London. What doesn't look great is when they move to going live, when they move to roll all the systems in, and all these little changes are happening, and suddenly the systems don't work in the way they were supposed to. And that will be down to lots of little changes over a long period when people didn't understand the implications of what they were doing. Now, there is research that says only 20% of benefits are ever delivered. And largely that's because projects change their scope and quality criteria for what makes their lives easier rather than what's important to the business. So change control, but seeing the holistic picture is really important, particularly in a program, because when every project should tell all the other projects about its changes, not just keep it to themselves. So assurance is a key element of control. There's 2 or 3 ways of looking at assurance. One of them is basically it's an independent view, so they can be done as a planned thing, or it can be done as a gate review is a very important area. And what does it look at? Well, it looks at controls like this, and it takes an independent view of the way you're doing it, and are you doing it well? It's looking at how does the governance work? Is it clearly defined? You'd normally ask, is it making good decisions? All those kind of things. Assurance should be looking at the strategic context of the project. Is it actually still required, or the program? Is it heading in the right direction, or is it starting to sprout legs and wings and go off on its own? Looks at the team. How good's the team? How well are they running it? Do they have the right amount of talent, or do they have too much talent and they're getting a bit unchallenged by what's going on? But ultimately, it's about looking at the business case and making sure that that's still standing the test of time. So something just to remember, finally, covers governance and it covers controls. We've got to allow time to build performance. So when you're in the early days of your project or program, you'll go through the team building stages of forming, the team comes together, storming when they work each other out, norming, which is actually when they start to kind of work effectively, and then they perform. And then we have this concept of reforming, because particularly for a project or program, as it moves through stages, it may need different people coming and going from it. Okay, so you've got to bear that in mind. And just thinking about documenting your governance, just think about what you need to have in place. You want to get job titles sorted out. You need to have clear objectives for the role. They need to have authority, and their authority can be across a wide area. Don't just put accountable or responsible. What's their authority in regard to scope, time, costs, quality, all those things? Be really clear about it. Benefits. Take the time to make it non-generic. And also drop down. It's not just about responsibilities, it's about activities. What do you expect those people to do? Yeah, and the task level, this can be quite time consuming, but it actually really helps it make it really clear what you're expecting of those people. And they've got enough time allocated to do their job. You can do the other headings, but if they've only got half a day a week, it's not going to get done. So you've got to be reasonable about that sort of stuff. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for your participation. Time for you to get a cup of coffee now and get on with the course. So we hope you enjoy it.